In today's episode, I speak to Roy Osing about his experience taking a startup company to a $1 billion in revenue and his perspectives on differentiation and growth. In this conversation, we go over 6 key takeaways, with Roy emphasising executing strategies over talking about them. Listen up to the rest of the conversation. I create clear thinking and decisive leaders who can amplify their influence. Contact me to find out how I can help you or your organisation. And today our guest is Roy Osing. How are you doing, Roy?
I'm doing exceedingly well. And yourself?
I'm doing fine. It just made me smile when you said that, because that's like a little tagline for cakes in the UK. So you did exceedingly well. It just made me smile there.
Well, that's good. That's good. I could have said if it were any better, it would be illegal, but that's just another way of saying it.
And what kind of cakes do you like eating?
Oh, listen, I'm into key lime pie. All right.
Oh.
So I will go anywhere for a key lime pie, a really good key lime pie. And so the cake piece, yeah, it's okay. But show me a key lime and I'm your best friend forever.
So, Roy, tell us more about you, except for your pie eating habits.
Well, I guess I'm kind of like a guy that was fortunate enough to be able to take a startup business to $1 billion in annual sales. I mean, if you wanted to look at one point, kind of like the culmination of my business career, ended up in being asked to take over a business that was just entering a very fast growing market, which we all know is based on the internet. And but I did it in a way that was really quite disruptive, because it was a business that started out as in a monopoly telephone company environment, and we had to break away from that to be highly competitive and customer focused and competitive focused. And so I had to do a lot of different things as a leader that quite frankly, weren't always welcomed with open arms at the time, because we had to basically replace the culture of a monopoly with a culture of a highly competitive business. And so that is sort of, I spent literally 40 years working at this whole issue of differentiation, which basically led us to a business that, that business today is 18 billion a year. And I like to think that we had some small, part to play in getting the momentum up and the run rate up on revenues to actually allow them to get to that level. So that's me. I'm just a doer.
I think you're a bit more than that, Roy. I think you're humble bragging.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, what's an expert, right? An expert isn't somebody that thinks a whole bunch of things. An expert, in my view, is somebody that achieves stuff and achieves performance by resonating with people and lighting fires in people. And that's kind of like that's sort of the style that I used. It's really simple, practical stuff. Listen to people, and got us to where we had to get to by doing some crazy things, quite frankly, that most people wouldn't do because they're not in a textbook.
Well, I'm interested to hear about that, because I know you have it here that you're the only author, entrepreneur, and executive leader who delivers practical and proven, audacious, unheard of ways to produce high-performing businesses and successful careers. Now, I could get a lot of this audacious, unheard of ways. So get talking.
Well, the one point I want to underscore is that, yeah, there were a lot of crazy things that I tried as a leader, which we'll get into. But the point I want to make with your listeners and your viewers is that you don't start doing things at the tactical level. You always have an end game in mind. And I always did. And it was always growth oriented, and it was performance oriented. And so the context of the sorts of things that we did was always to improve performance, take it to another level, and achieve extraordinary results. Okay, it wasn't just because it was a sexy thing to do. And that's one of the issues I have with today's business world, quite frankly. Everybody's chasing AI without really understanding how it fits into their business, how it serves a business purpose. So start out with context. So the context that I always had was, if it didn't contribute to driving superlative growth, we wouldn't do it. So there
Yeah.
were several things that we discovered that collectively, actually, I think were quite instrumental, and it's in driving growth. And it all started out with this relentless focus on execution that I've always had. It's like a buddy of mine used to say, doing it is 10 times better than talking about it. And absolutely is the case. There's way too much time being spent on the efficacy of the plan and not enough time being spent on execution. So I learned at a very young age in my career that if it can't be executed, I don't even want to talk about it. And so I created a strategic planning process like no other, and it's called strategic game planning. And it's all focused. In fact, we can do this in like 48 hours. I work with clients to actually have a strategy that can be executed in the 49th hour. Okay, there are no processes out there proven to work in the real world, the $1 billion, that actually come close to that. So audaciously, having a planning process built to execute is something that nobody thinks about, Jude. They don't. Okay. For one thing, they go back to pedantic strategic planning 101 and they go through the process, right? Of SWOTs and subject matter experts and all that kind of stuff. I'm not trying to denigrate that. I'm saying if you want results, it's based on what you do, not what you think. So get it just about right and then start executing, learn from execution and get going. So the first thing I had to do was create a new process for planning that really focused on what are the key things that we need to do right away, right, to get on this growth trajectory. And it's kind of a simple, crazy little process that goes like this. If you answer 3 questions, you basically have your strategy. First question is, how big do you want to be? That's a question of how much top line revenue do you want in 24 months, not 5 years. Okay, because the 4th year of 5-year plan never shows up anyways, right? And it always gives permission for people to put things off. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So my planning process is literally 24 periods of 30 days. And what we ask is the question is, if you're sitting at 5 million top line, where do you want to be in 24 months? You want to be at 2 million, 5 million, 10 million? What do you want? It starts off with the numbers because the numbers actually define the character and the risk of the strategy. So we do that first, and that's completely different than anybody else. Everybody else develops a strategy, right? And then they define what the economics and the financial impacts are, and then they look at that and go, "Hey, wait a minute, that's not good enough." So they change assumptions without changing the strategy, and that's absolutely dead wrong.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Right? So figure out what you want to, how big you want to be. The second question, who you want to serve, where are you going to get the money? So this is all about trying to create a topology, if you will, of a few customer segments, okay, that you think have got the latent demand potential to get you to your growth goals. And this is a very, very critical thing. You don't want to serve the market. You want to be really focused, okay, in certain areas on customer groups. So you define those, and then you ask the question, what do they crave? Not what do they need? What do they crave? So the whole idea behind cravings, and I'm the only one that talks about cravings, the whole idea is people basically have their needs satisfied. Everybody uses sort of the same technologies, et cetera, right? Products and services. Yeah, tough to differentiate your business on products and services. There's nobody in the craving space. And by that, I mean, other than you want and need internet service, as an individual, what do you crave? What are your secrets? What do you covet? What do you lust for? What do you desire? The reason that that's concerning is because that space doesn't have competition. That space does have the ability to premium price. And isn't that where we want to go? You know, we don't want to fight margins in a commodity space, right? We want to, you know, sort of take a deep breath and pump our chest and go in with premium prices that people are willing to pay because we satisfy what they crave. So that who to serve piece is a huge piece around that. Nobody does that. Third question is, given that we've just defined who we're going to serve, the next question is critical. It says, how are we going to compete and win in that space? So there will be some players, right, and some contenders in there. The question is, how are we going to outpace them? What are we going to do differently, right, that attracts those people because we do such an insane job about taking care of what they crave. Within that, I had to create my own way to differentiate, and it's called the only statement. And so, as opposed to claiming, which most people do, that you're better, or you're the best, or you're number one, or you're the market leader, I call that, Jude, by the way, I call that claptrap. Doesn't mean anything, right? All it does is allow you to beat your chest and say, well, it's about you. That's the ultimate form of narcissism, by the way, to claim you're best, because it depends on who you're talking to. So I've had to create my own vehicles, call the only statement. And it says, we are the only ones who. We're not better, we're not best, we're the only. So it's a binary kind of thing that you're setting up. It can be observed and it can be measured. And the issue is nobody else out there actually uses that as a basis for planning. So I package that into my planning process. We can do this in literally 48 hours. And I've been working with particularly small businesses, and they're absolutely amazing results, and they're doing well. And because they're breaking away, they're disrupting from kind of like the traditional way of doing their business. And I've discovered that's the secret. You need to figure out, right, what that vertical piece is that only you participate in, and mine it, and then be prepared to shift as you go. So that planning process is the first audacious piece. There's a lot of things that flow from that, okay? But one of the key things to execute well is you got to, what I call, cleanse the internal environment. What does that mean? It means you want to reduce the friction points in the delivery system, and you want to enhance viscosity in the machine. And there's ways that I came up with to do that. And one of which is kill dumb rules, right? A dumb rule is a rule in your organization that makes absolutely no sense to customers. Just nothing but makes them go postal, tell everybody how stupid you are, and they leave, right? So I had a program called Kill Dumb Rules. And what that was, it was identifying the rules that didn't make any sense and holding managers accountable for either eliminating them, killing them, or changing them to make them a bit more customer friendly. So let me just stop there.
Because how did that go down? Because I know as being, my maverick nature, I totally agree with killing loads of. Why are you not doing this? Because it's stupid. That's why. So I totally get that, but I also recognize that for a lot of people, those dumb rules are very comforting.
Yeah, they're what I call yummy, right? They feel so good. It's like having ice cream and whatever. And I ran up. Look at every one of these things that I did. I ran into all sorts of objections because it was disruptive. I mean, it challenged, right, the sort of thinking of the day. And so the killing the dumb rules thing, I got a lot of pushback. I got a lot of pushback from colleagues. My boss thought I was crazy until I explained exactly what we're trying to do. You can't execute well if you got a bunch of things that get in the way, like rules that don't make any sense. So actually what I did is I had it as a part of the performance planning process in my business. I recognized dumb rule killers. I rewarded the dumb rule killers. I celebrated their success. And after a while, people kind of got onto this. It says this wasn't about making you feel bad as the rule creator. It's about saying, okay, it may have made sense last year, but today it's irrelevant given the new strategy that we have, right? And so this whole process of disruption has its roots in the strategy. It's not a personal vendetta. And that's the beauty of the process, because it's not a tactic. It's a means to an end that you have to do, right? And people go, yeah, okay. I would say, look, why are you wanting to piss customers off all the time using this rule? How does that get us to 1 billion? And they go, okay, fair point. It's not about you and your feelings, right? It's about increasing the performance of the machine to get up on the revenue line. And so we did things like killing dumb rules, cutting the crap, all of these, and I used the names viscerally like that to get attention and have people say, what's that all about? Good. Okay, I've earned the right now to have a conversation just based on the language that I use. And then so that sort of Another thing that we did, by the way, and this is really insane. I had an HR host that actually cut me off after this because she thought I was crazy. But it's called hiring for goosebumps. Have you ever heard about it?
No, this sounds interesting.
Of course you haven't, because I'm the only one to. So here, the notion here is one of the essential things that you need to provide amazing, superlative, gasp-worthy service experiences. You need human beings that like human beings, right?
Hmm.
Breakthrough thinking. You actually need to have employees that like Homo sapiens. It occurred to me a long time ago. Not people that want to write code, etc. And you know the type, right? You go into a store and they're doing everything to avoid eye contact. That is not a human being lover. I want people leaning into my customers and said, how am I going to hire people like doing this? So I came up with this idea, which I laterally tagged as hiring for goosebumps, but it involved the process. The process was really simple, by the way, and I participated in all the interviews. It was a panel interview process. So if we were hiring a customer service person, I was in the room, president of the company, intimidating for my managers who were sitting there, but I treated this, they need to take this as a learning experience. But it was really impressive from the prospective employee base. So I asked them a question. Do you like human beings? And the look in their face would be, okay, gee, I don't know where this is going. I think the right answer is yes. That's probably what he wants. And so they would say, yeah, well, yeah, Mr. Osing, I do like human beings. No, I'd say, no, do you love human beings is the question. Yeah, yeah, I guess I love human beings, right? So my next question, which was the killer question, quite frankly, was, okay, good. Tell me a story that would that would prove your love for people and your desire to serve them as an innate part of your DNA structure. And this is what separated the ones that really got it from the ones that didn't get it. Because the people that didn't get it, they kind of gave you the sort of academic blah, 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 and would leave me cold, literally, because it was so phony and superficial. But the person that really had it as part of their makeup would tell a story that was so rich and so passionate and so rich with emotion that guess what it did? It gave me goosebumps. I would hire that person in a heartbeat and teach them the business because they're smart. But I would never put somebody that didn't give me goosebumps in a position of having to create memorable experiences. And
Okay,
people thought I was crazy doing that.
let me stop you there. I can understand that. That makes sense. But what I'm thinking is all those people inside the organization already who may have been like that original person when they arrived, but somehow it's been beaten out. So, I don't know how that happened, but somehow they went from being wonderfully happy and doe-eyed to maybe not so happy and doe-eyed. So therefore, they may love human beings outside of work, but inside work, we have made it too hard to love human beings. So how would you say an organization needs to get that back wholesale? Because
Well,
for some people, it would be too dangerous to show how much you love your customer in your workplace, which sounds a bit odd, but I've certainly seen it.
well, again, first of all, it starts out with it's a leadership issue. You
Yeah.
need to have a strategy that declares creating gasp worthy experiences in this business is a strategic imperative for growth. You need somebody to say that, and it has to be the leader. That's the way you give people permission. And then you actually show them what it means. I call it fingerprint leadership. Look, I'm a believer in strategic micromanagement, okay? I'm a believer that there are certain things that are completely inappropriate to delegate. And we're talking about one of them right now. Architecting the moment of truth when the company meets the customer. Okay, and what behaviors you expect out of a frontline person in that respect. That whole conversation, that whole discussion is actually permission giving to the people who, one, have always wanted to do it, but we've punished them for it. It says to them, a change is here. Okay, we're going into a different direction. And this isn't being nice for the sake of being nice, Jude. Okay, I want to make that point.
Mm.
Okay, this isn't being nice. This is serving in a way that takes their breath away. So it's all about the other person. It's not about how we feel. It's not about trying to be happy during the day. It's not about that. This is a strategic set of behaviors, okay, intended to evoke, right, a response that says, I'm prepared to do business with you because of the way you treat me, because of the way you serve me. Okay, so it's architecting that moment. What I discovered is it doesn't happen overnight, okay? It doesn't, because first of all, people don't trust you. I
Yeah.
mean, don't forget the business I was in came from a monopoly where we took orders and told customers what to do. Well,
Hmm.
now Roy's saying, hey, we got to serve them. We got to take their breath away. We need to give the customer goosebumps when they have an experience with us. Well, that's a completely different set of dynamics, right? So it takes a while to get there, it takes a while to say it's okay, it takes a while for people to believe that it's okay to fail, to try some stuff. It's okay to fail as long as we're moving in the right direction, and that the management team, the leadership team is there to support. The question I always ask is, how can I help? You know where we're going. Okay, you know the strategic imperatives like gas-worthy experiences. How can I help? How can I help you do that in a way that you want to do, in a better way? And so that's a cultural change, and we know that it doesn't happen overnight. Okay, but you have to be relentless. You have to be tenacious. Okay, I was the guy that wanted to take people's breath away. Everybody knew it. Everybody knew it. I talked about it all the time. I talked about what works, what doesn't work, et cetera, et cetera. And over time, you gradually make a nano inch worth of progress. And so baby steps is for a disruptive leader, even though we like to think that there's silver bullets all over the place, never happens. Never happens. You can't create a complete change in culture overnight. And
No.
leaders just need to understand that. So
Yeah.
I was just relentless. I just kept going and going and going and going.
Okay. So thank you for that. Let's listen to a quick advert.
The Maverick Paradox. Judith Germain is an author, speaker, consultant, mentor, and trainer, and the leading authority on maverick leadership. She is the founder of the Maverick Paradox, which supports organizations to enhance their leadership capabilities and to help business owners develop and grow their businesses. Judith enables individuals, business owners, and organizations to improve their impact and influence. She is also HR Zone's leadership columnist, and her expert opinion has appeared in national, international, and trade press.
Welcome back to the Maverick Paradox. This is the podcast for the pathologically curious. So I'm thinking now, I can imagine, an internet startup company doing that. Now I'm thinking there'll be people out there that say, oh, but I work in a bank or I work in an insurance company. My customers aren't going to get goosebumps because I processed the check faster or whatever it happens to be. Do you think it's possible to create that gasp experience in any company, in any industry?
I certainly do, because in the banking situation, it ain't about the processing of the check. Customers expect what I call core service to be done, right?
Yeah.
And they're not going to be blown away when they get an internet service that worked. They're not going to get blown away when the check gets cashed. They're not
Yeah.
going to get blown away when the washing machine works, okay? What they get blown away by and what creates loyalty is how they feel when they transact. Okay, understand? It's how they feel. So go to the bank situation. There are many simple ways, okay, that a customer contact employee, okay, can make the customer feel good about the transaction. Okay, and look at this is basic human relationships as well, right? But there
Yeah.
are certain things, and we spend all sorts of time with that. So look at the end of the day, my experience is this is agnostic, okay, of any industry, any business, for profits, not for profits. It's agnostic to size. It's all about, do you have a service experience vision, right? And are you able to create a direct line of sight between every employee and that vision and actually translate it in terms of what it means for each individual? I call it line of sight leadership. And I practice this all the time. When we had a strategy, part of the execution process was actually drawing a direct line of sight between the strategy that we created and behaviors in the workplace. And I got to tell you, was that hard work? It's like, what does it mean to a sales rep? What does it mean to a customer service rep? What does it mean to somebody in an internal audit? What does it mean to a marketing analyst? I mean, literally. And if you don't do that, guess what happens? Organizational dysfunction. I'm always amused when people say, well, we got a dysfunctional organization. How do we fix that? I can tell you how to fix it, but most leaders don't want to put in the work.
Yep.
It's all about translation, right?
Yeah.
And once you do that, it works.
I think it's funny because, like you, I'm a strategist too. And sometimes people, you get a result and I'm like, why are you surprised? If you've done this is obviously going to be the outcome, and it's like, I suppose everybody thinks in a different way, but like you, where you have that direct line of sight, I think there's that linear pathway quite often that if I take action A, so cause and effect, action A is going to lead to B, is going to lead to C. If I treat my staff wrong, they will leave, and then this one, it's fairly obvious. Tell me about your book, Be Different or Be Dead.
Yeah, so the latest book, which has been out for about a year now, is called Be Different or Be Dead, The Audacious, Unheard of Ways I Took a Startup to $1 billion in Sales, is the 7th in a book series of Be Different or Be Dead that I've written. I started out in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been whacking away at this for a long time. The first book was called Be Different or Be Dead, Your Business Survival Guide. And then I wrote a couple of ebooks that took vertical slices of that because people wanted to know, well, what does it mean to marketing? What does it mean to careers? Because it has application in all of that.
Yeah.
Up to the latest one, which is kind of an updated version because I learn a lot more about my stuff as I go. Like having conversations like this is really helpful for me because I learn more about my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so the focus of the latest one is on growth, whereas I started out by focusing in very difficult economic times on how does businesses survive by being different. Now I'm talking about how do people achieve miraculous, jaw-dropping, audacious growth by applying the same principles. Okay, this hasn't changed.
Have you rehashed your book?
Well, I think what I'm trying to do is make it more relevant to people because everybody learns in a different way.
Yeah, true.
Okay? That's what I would say. And yeah, look at everybody gets complacent. The inertia out there, as you know, to doing things differently is so huge. I mean, look at the education system has taught us to comply. It's taught us to conform.
Taught some of us, Roy. Taught some of us.
Yeah, well, I'm applying to I'm talking about the masses that sit in the middle of the Bell distribution curve. Those people, quite frankly, that I would like to just move 1 point to the right. Okay, but they're sitting there. So trying to get them to lean into be different, to lean into be disruptive, to lean into being unpopular, inconsistent, all those kind of things that kind of like describe the aura of being different and being a risk taker. Really hard to get people to do that. And so, I just keep whacking away at it, trying to find different ways of talking about it and creating a conversation. Because at the end of the day, I would be happy if the nature of the conversation in business changes away from being the best to being the only one. Like the biggest problem we have in business today, in my opinion, is nobody differentiates themselves. Yep. Differentiation is horrifically done. We give customers no granular reason as to why they should do business with us and not the competition. And that's because the whole theory behind unique selling propositions is complete hogwash.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Sure. So what it does is it says what you need to do, okay, and I'm paraphrasing, to have a unique sales proposition, what you need to do is identify a problem that your target market has, right? And then figure out how you can solve the problem, full stop. You see the short?
That's silly. Yeah. I agree with that.
It doesn't talk about how you're solving that problem in a way that's different than the other choices that they have. And isn't that part of differentiation? Answer, yes. But there's only one person talking about it that way. This dude in Vancouver, Canada. okay, who's been on this be different or be dead journey for his whole life. He's the only one doing it. And so I'm trying to gather an army of advocates like you to help promulgate the word so we can get it out there. I'm like, if you can't give me 48 hours, right, to define the future of your business, you shouldn't be in business. You shouldn't call yourself a leader. You should be ashamed of yourself. And so, yeah, I'm willing to take shaming as a tactic, whatever it takes to get people off the train they're on and onto one that I've discovered works. See, at the end of the day, they'll say, Roy, why should I follow you? And I say, because I got to $1 billion in annual sales by doing this stuff. What have you done? Nobody can argue about that, right? And so, yeah, it's a bit of tough love, and I'm okay with that because I'm a strong person. And I have not seen a situation where anybody can argue with results. Common denominator of good ideas is a result that you get from them, not the efficacy and the genius of the strategic principles driving the idea.
I would quibble a little bit by saying logical people wouldn't argue with that, but there are lots of people who would argue with the facts, as we know. So because it all comes down to how much of their own identity is tied up with being right. So then
Yeah, and so part of the challenge is to be a coach, is to say, how can I help? Okay, the thing that the people say to me when they ask for my help is, hey, look, Roy, I've read your stuff, and the problem I have in my business is I'm not able to get on a different growth trajectory. So I'm happy with that because what they're doing is relating my stuff to the growth problem that they have. And for me, that's a huge breakthrough. And so when I have an opportunity to kind of pitch them on what's about, and it's only going to be 48 hours, to go, okay, yeah, I can take 48 hours, and it's not mega millions. It's pretty easy because, for me, it's a matter of paying it forward. I mean, and when they finish the experience, two things hit them. It's like, wow, that was pretty easy, is the first thing. And the second thing is, wow, we really created a pretty solid team now behind a different direction. Thanks, Roy. I appreciate that. That's a good day for me.
Brilliant. Before we end, though, I'd like to just go back a step with your only statement.
Yep.
I can imagine lots of people out there want to write an only statement, but how do they write a statement where they are truly the only, and the thing that they've picked isn't silly? Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? They've tried.
Oh, what a great lob! It was almost like we predetermined the questions here. It's a great question, and thank you for that. Because the essence, okay, of my work of being different is around that answer to how are you going to compete and win, which degenerates into the only statement. So the process is really simple. We've covered part of it, okay? Okay, first of all, you define who you're going to serve to satisfy your growth goals, and then you do a deep dive into those customer groups to define what they crave, right? We talked about that earlier. And what you try and do is answer the question, what keeps these people awake at night? What do they desire? And so it presumes a great deal of knowledge about that customer group that you're going to target. But let's say that you've done that. Once you have that, then it's time to craft your only statement. And by the way, the point I want to make to all your audience is the only statement is always a draft. It's never finished. It never ends. How could it? In a world of constant and chaotic change, it would be intellectually dishonest of me to say, you'll get it right. You'll get it close, and that's all you can hope for. And if it works, good on you, but always be prepared to change, okay? So we're going to draft the only. And I'll answer the question this way by giving you an example of an engagement that I just had recently that was absolutely mind-blowing. So this lawn care company came to me, and this business was in the business of cutting lawns, cleaning up yards, and so forth, right? So they said, we need to have a strategy that will take us to another level. Roy, can you help? I said, yeah. So we went through the process. We did the how big do you want to be? We got to who to serve. The decision was, in order to satisfy our growth objectives And I'm the guy that tries to get people to focus. I don't want you to think too broadly because you scatter your resources, right? And with that dilution comes lack of results. So anyways, they decided to focus on what we call here a strata company. In the U.S., they call it homeowners associations. I don't know what they call it in the U.K., but this is the company that is responsible for maintaining either a condominium complex or a bare land complex, right, that has a bunch of homes.
Gotcha.
And so it's called a strata corporation here. So they decided to focus on the strata corporations, and we got into the whole notion of say, well, okay, how can we be truly unique in terms of what we do for strata corporations? And it was a struggle. People say, well, everybody does lawns, etc. And I said, yeah, but what if we thought about ourselves? What if we reframed our thinking? What if we thought about ourselves as being in the property development solutions business?
Yeah.
Would you think that would work? And I could just see it, right? The pupils dilated. I say, so what this would do is, first of all, empower you to do more than what you're now doing. Okay, to basically follow what the strata wants and provide customized solutions. You can leverage all of your relationships with painters, with other trades, etc. But you supply the solution, you brand the solution, you take ownership of it. And so we came up with, they were absolutely blown away. So they came up with this only statement. Lawn and Garden Co. is the only service provider who delivers tailored property development solutions for stratas. Boom. That's the only statement. And what that did is, first of all, it was true. Nobody else was doing it. So the point I'm trying to make is the only statement isn't always about who you are. It's about who you need to be and who you're capable of being in order to satisfy the cravings of the who that you've just defined. Okay, so it's a very deliberate process. Another client thought they were in the business of selling boats to boat dealers. And what we ended up with saying is, no, we're in the business of delivering solutions to grow a boat dealer's business. They're in the business development business. Same thing, reframe it. And I would always say, well, let's use the boat as the anchor. And then I decided that was probably not a good reference.
No, that I like that. I do something fairly similar. But one thing I was thinking though, just before we end and keep talking, is what happens when you created this really cool only statement, and then your competition goes, that looks great, and they do it too.
Well, yeah. First of all, you need to accept the reality that will happen. Once they understand how smart you are, right, and how clever the idea was, based on not the intellect, but based on how you're outperforming them in the market, you can always accept that they're going to respond. That's life. And so what you do is, I got to do this again. That's what I'm saying. It's always a draft.
It's true. Okay.
It's never end. It never ever is over. And the other thing that you should think about, because I'm an enemy of benchmarking best in class, okay? Hate it. It's nothing but copying disguise. It's not innovative. It's like a copycat. It's not creative. You should at least be happy that you're being benchmarked by somebody else. If you want to get in the benchmarking game, you be the one that they're benchmarking and then move on them and be prepared to move again and again and again. That's what you do.
Be very careful, because we all know what happened to IBM.
They weren't smart.
Brilliant. Roy, it's been fab having you on the show.
Hey, listen, I'm delighted and I'm honored that you would invite me. So thank you.
No, you're welcome. It's been a really great conversation. And thank you out there for tuning in to the Maverick Paradox podcast. I am Judith Germain, your host, and I hope you've enjoyed today's conversation.
The Maverick Paradox Magazine. The Maverick Paradox Magazine is for the pathologically curious. Written by a swagger of socialized mavericks who are divergent thinkers, the magazine tackles the biggest issues affecting maverick leaders today. You might be a business owner or a leader within an organization who wants to have your thinking challenged, to be exposed to a diversity of thought, or to learn from diverse experts in their fields. If so, the Maverick Paradox Magazine is for you. Join the swagger at themaverickparadox.com and engage in the conversation.